Weakness is not the opposite of faith. It is often the place where faith becomes most real. That statement runs against almost everything the culture teaches about strength and confidence and the appearance of having it together. The world tends to reward the performance of certainty. The person who projects confidence, who speaks without hesitation, who seems to know exactly where they are going and why, that person is read as someone worth following. Weakness, by contrast, is something to be hidden, managed, recovered from as quickly as possible so the performance can resume. But faith operates by a completely different logic. Faith does not grow strongest in the person who needs nothing. It grows strongest in the person who needs everything and knows exactly where to go for it. The weakness is not the obstacle to faith. It is the very condition that makes faith necessary. And faith that has been tested by genuine weakness, by the seasons where the person praying did not know if they could keep going, is a different kind of faith than the faith of easy seasons. It has been proven. It has held under pressure. It knows something that untested faith does not yet know. You are here on a Wednesday morning, and Wednesday has a particular weight to it. The week is not new anymore. The fresh intention of Monday has worn down to the honest reality of the middle. The energy that started the week has been spent on the first 2 days of demands and decisions, and the 100 small things that accumulate without anyone noticing until Wednesday arrives and the cost becomes visible. And in that honest, unvarnished middle of the week, the question surfaces, do I have enough faith for what is still ahead? This is Wednesday, March 25th, and the answer to that question is not found in yourself. It is found in the one you came to this morning. The faith that holds through weakness does not come from your own reserves. It comes from a source that does not diminish when your reserves do. His word declares in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9 that His grace is sufficient for you, for His power is made perfect in weakness. Made perfect, not diminished by weakness, not simply present despite it, made perfect in it. Which means the weakest version of you, the one that showed up this Wednesday morning with less than the week has been asking for, is precisely the version of you in which God's power has the most room to operate. Not the strongest version, the most dependent one. Before we enter this prayer, write in the comments right now, my faith is not built on my strength. It is built on God's. Even when I feel weak, I will not let go. Write it as a declaration over the part of you that has been tempted to believe that weakness disqualifies, because it does not. It positions, like this video, as an act of faith in the middle of the week. Subscribe to this channel so we can seek God together every morning, especially on the Wednesdays that feel heaviest. And share this prayer with someone who is in the middle of a season where their faith has felt thinner than they want it to be. They need this more than they might admit. Now let us bring the weakness before the one who works through it. Lord, my God and my Father, I come before you on this Wednesday morning with exactly what I have, which is not as much as I wish it were. The faith I bring to you today is real, but it is not the strong, certain, unshaken faith I would prefer to offer. It is the faith of someone in the middle of the week, in the middle of a season, who is still here, still praying, still choosing to show up before you even when showing up feels more like stumbling than striding. Take this, Lord. It is what I have, and your word says it is enough. Your word declares in the book of Mark, chapter 9, verse 24, the honest cry of a father who brought his sick child before Jesus. Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. That is one of the most important prayers in the entire Bible. Not I believe completely. Not my faith is strong and whole and untroubled. I believe. And in the same breath, help my unbelief. Both true at once, the faith and the weakness held together in one honest sentence. And Jesus responded, not after the man achieved a stronger faith, in the middle of the one he had. Father, I want to be honest about what a weak season of faith actually feels like from the inside, because I think honest prayer reaches further than composed prayer. It does not feel like dramatic doubt. It rarely looks like the person who stands up and declares that they no longer believe. It feels quieter than that. It feels like the prayers that used to come easily now require effort. Like the scriptures that used to land with force now pass through without quite the same impact. Like the worship that used to feel natural now feels like a discipline maintained rather than a joy expressed. Like the certainty that used to feel solid has become something more like a decision, chosen deliberately because the feeling is not doing the work it used to do. And the person in that place often feels ashamed of it, because the gap between where they are and where they believe they should be spiritually is uncomfortable. And the shame of the gap tends to produce more distance rather than less. The person who feels their faith is weak often pulls back from the very practices that would strengthen it, because showing up with weak faith feels like showing up wrong. But that is exactly the lie that this prayer is dismantling. Showing up with weak faith is not showing up wrong. It is showing up honestly. And honest showing up is what God can work with. What He cannot work with is the absence, the staying away, the decision not to come to Him because what you have to bring does not feel worthy of the trip. Maybe that is exactly where you are this Wednesday, not in a crisis of unbelief, but in a season where the faith feels thinner than it used to, where the connection that once felt strong now feels like something you have to work to maintain, where you are still choosing God, but the choosing takes more effort than it did in the seasons when everything felt alive and close and unmistakable. Your word declares in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1, that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Substance, evidence. Those are not emotional words, they are structural ones. Faith is not primarily a feeling, it is a foundation, and foundations do not need to feel solid to function, they need to hold. And weak-feeling faith that keeps showing up, that keeps choosing, that keeps coming back to God, even when the return feels like effort, that faith is holding, even when you cannot feel it holding. My faith is not built on my strength, it is built on God's. Even when I feel weak, I will not let go. So Lord, I release the shame of the weak season today. I stop treating my thin faith as evidence of spiritual failure, and I bring it before you as what it actually is. An honest offering from a real person in a real season, and I trust that you receive it, because your word says you do. And Father, I want to ask for something specific about the way I carry my faith today in its current condition, because weak faith is tempted to hide itself, to go quiet in the conversations where strong faith would speak, to shrink back from the very things that would feed it, because the depleted version does not feel worthy of the nourishment. The person with weak faith skips the prayer because the prayer feels hollow, skips the community because showing up feels like pretending, skips the word because the words are not landing the way they used to. And in the skipping, the faith grows thinner still. Do not let me skip today, Lord. Let me come to the table even though the appetite is not what it was. Let me open the word even though the impact is quieter than it used to be. Let me pray even though the prayer feels more like discipline than delight right now. Because your word declares in the book of Galatians chapter 6 verse 9 that we should not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. At the proper time, not our time, yours. And the harvest that is coming is not diminished by the weariness of the planting season. It is coming to the person who did not give up, who kept showing up with whatever they had, even on the Wednesdays where what they had was thin. Your word also declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 18, that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Close, that is proximity. He moves toward the weakest, not away from them. The faith that is thin and honest draws him near in a way that the polished and managed version sometimes does not. Let that be a comfort this morning. Your weakness is not repelling God, it is drawing him in. Lord, I want to bring a story into this prayer that belongs here entirely. In the book of 1 Kings chapter 17, there is a widow in Zarephath, a foreign woman, not an Israelite, not someone with a history of covenant relationship with God, just a woman at the end of her resources. Elijah finds her gathering sticks and asks for a cup of water and a piece of bread. And she says to him, "I do not have any bread. I have only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I'm gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son that we may eat it and die." That is a sentence of complete depletion, not thin faith. No faith at all, just the honest inventory of a woman who has reached the end. And Elijah says to her, "Do not be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." And she went, and she did. And the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry. The miracle did not happen before she acted on the word. It happened in the acting. She brought what was nearly nothing, a handful of flour, a little oil, and the provision multiplied in the offering, not before it. That is the principle of faith in weakness. You do not have to have a full jar to see God work. You have to bring the handful. The thin faith, offered honestly, is what God multiplies into the unshakable kind, not because of the size of what you brought, because of the faithfulness of the one who receives it. Your word declares in the book of Matthew chapter 17 verse 20 that if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. A mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, not impressive, not abundant, small. And Jesus says that is enough for mountains, not because the seed is powerful, because what the seed is planted in is. My faith is not built on my strength, it is built on God's. Even when I feel weak, I will not let go. So bring the handful of flour, Lord. That is what I am doing this Wednesday morning, not pretending I have a full jar, bringing what I actually have, and trusting that in your hands what is nearly nothing becomes exactly enough. And I want to receive one more thing from the widow's story before we move on. After the miracle began, it did not announce itself dramatically. The jar simply did not run out. Day after day, she went to it expecting emptiness and found there was still something there. The provision was quiet, daily, undramatic. She would not have made the news. There was no moment where the flour suddenly overflowed and spilled across the floor. It just kept being enough. Every time, for as long as the need continued. That is the kind of faith I am asking for today. Not the faith of a spectacular moment. The faith of a jar that does not run out. That goes to God each morning expecting what was promised and finds it there. Not overflowing dramatically, just enough. For today, and then again tomorrow, and then again the day after that. The quiet faithfulness of a provision that does not call attention to itself, but that sustains everything that depends on it. Your word declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 1, that the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Not I have everything I could ever desire. I shall not want. The need will be met. The jar will not run out. The oil will not fail. Not in the dramatic surplus of easy seasons, but in the steady, faithful, day-by-day provision of a God who does not abandon the one who keeps coming back to him with the handful they have. Father, I want to ask you now for something specific about unshakable faith. Not just faith that survives weakness, faith that is actually made stronger by it. Because there is a kind of faith that is conditioned by favorable circumstances. It is strong when the answers are coming and the prayers are being answered visibly and the sense of God's presence is immediate and undeniable. And it weakens when the circumstances change, when the silence comes, when the answer is delayed, when the felt presence recedes and the discipline of showing up has to carry what the feeling used to carry. That kind of faith is real, but it is not yet unshakable. It is shaken by what it has not yet learned to hold through. Unshakable faith is different. It is the faith that has been through the silence and found that God was still there, that has prayed into an apparent void and discovered in hindsight that what felt like absence was actually preparation, that has held on through the weak season and arrived on the other side with a knowledge of God that the strong season could not have produced. Because you do not know what you are standing on until the ground shakes, and the person whose faith has been shaken and has held knows something the untested person does not yet know, that the foundation is real, that it holds, that it was there through everything. Before the Wednesday afternoon that tries to drain what this morning prayer deposited, before the moment later today where the weakness returns, and the faith feels thin again, and the temptation is to interpret the feeling as a verdict. In that moment, say it again, my faith is not built on my strength. It is built on God's. Let that be the anchor that holds when the feeling is not. And Lord, I want to ask for the specific kind of strength that carries a person through the middle of the week, not the strength of enthusiasm, which tends to be highest at the beginning of things. Not the strength of relief, which tends to arrive at the end, the strength of the middle, the endurance that has no dramatic fuel to draw on. That simply keeps going because stopping has not been accepted as an option. That strength has a name in your word. It is called long-suffering in some translations, endurance in others, perseverance in others. But the Greek word underneath all of them, hupomone, means something like remaining under, staying in the difficult place rather than escaping it. Not because the difficult place is comfortable, but because the one who called you is still there, still working, still producing something in the staying that the leaving would have prevented. Let me remain under today, Lord. Not escape the Wednesday that is hard. Stay in it, with you, doing the ordinary work of a person of faith in the middle of the week, without the dramatic fuel of a Monday's fresh start or a Friday's finish line. Just this, Wednesday, with you. And the faith that keeps choosing that even when it does not feel strong. Your word declares in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verses 17 and 18, that even though the fig tree does not bud and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Yet, in spite of everything that is not producing, in spite of the visible evidence against rejoicing, yet, that is the faith I am asking for today. Not the faith of full fig trees, the faith of the yet. My faith is not built on my strength, it is built on God's. Even when I feel weak, I will not let go. Father, as this prayer moves toward its close, I want to receive something from you that I will carry into the rest of this week. I want to receive a picture of what unshakable faith actually looks like in an ordinary life. Because unshakable faith is not the absence of weakness. It is the presence of a foundation that weakness cannot reach. It is the person who weeps and still trusts, who doubts and still shows up, who prays when the prayer feels thin and keeps praying when the feeling does not improve, who holds on not because the holding is easy, but because letting go is not an option they are willing to consider. That kind of faith is not built in a single morning of prayer. It is built in the accumulation of mornings. In the Wednesday mornings that felt like this one, in the days when the faith felt thin and the person praying came anyway, in the seasons of apparent silence that were endured not because the silence was understood, but because the God behind the silence had proven faithful often enough to be trusted through it. That is what unshakable faith is made of. Not dramatic moments, faithful, ordinary ones. Your word declares in the book of Romans chapter 5, verses 3 through 4, that we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. That is the chain. Suffering to perseverance, to character, to hope, not a shortcut in the sequence. Each link forged by the one before it. And the weak season you are in right now, the Wednesday morning, where the faith feels thinner than you want it to be, is not outside the chain. It is inside it. The perseverance you are practicing right now, by showing up here when showing up costs something, is producing character. And the character being formed is producing hope that will not disappoint. You are not failing this weak season. You are being formed by it. And what is being formed is the faith that knows something the easy season never could have taught, that God holds, even when everything else does not. That the foundation is real, even when it cannot be felt. That weak faith offered honestly is received by a God who is not weak at all, and that in the receiving, something begins to grow that weakness itself cannot produce. Unshakable faith, built not on the strength you brought, on the strength of the one you brought it to. My faith is not built on my strength, it is built on God's. Even when I feel weak, I will not let go. That is my declaration for this Wednesday. Not because the weakness is gone, because the source of the faith is greater than the weakness. Not because the feeling has returned to full strength, because the foundation does not depend on the feeling, and not because I have arrived at some level of spiritual achievement that weakness can no longer touch, because I am still here, still praying, still choosing, and that is exactly what unshakable faith looks like in an ordinary life on an ordinary Wednesday morning. To everyone who prayed with me this morning, go back to the comments and write it one final time. My faith is not built on my strength. It is built on God's. Even when I feel weak, I will not let go. Let that be the sentence you hold on to through everything this Wednesday asks of you. Subscribe to this channel and come back tomorrow morning. We are here every day, building faith one morning at a time. Share this prayer with someone who's been quiet lately because they are ashamed of where their faith is right now. Your sharing might be the thing that tells them it is safe to come back. May the Lord meet your thin faith this morning with His abundant grace. May the weakness you brought into this prayer be the very place where His power is made perfect. May every shaking this week produces not a collapse, but a deeper settling into the foundation that cannot be moved. And may you arrive at the end of this week knowing something you did not know at the beginning of it, that the faith that held through the weak season was real, and the God who held it with you was faithful. In Jesus' name, amen.